Hello, I'm Nathan P. Butler, author of a Saga on Home Video and host of From the Star Wars Home Video Library here on YouTube, and this is Star Wars Home Video Year by Year. This time we take a look at 1994. In the US, you could say that this is sort of the eye of the storm when it comes to the THX remastering. In 1993, we saw the THX Remastered editions make their debut, not under that name, as the LaserDisc set known as the Definitive Collection. We'll see them actually hit as the THX Remastered edition with a lot of promotion behind it in 1995 in our next episode. Here in 1994, it was pretty quiet on the American scene. But we did see some interesting spin-offs from that US product and the idea of fancy schmancy box sets here in 1994, just in other regions, which is what we want to spend our time on in this episode. This, by the way, for context, is the year in which the Lucasfilm Fan Club magazine finally became Star Wars Insider. And if that's what I'm mentioning, it's really not a big year for Star Wars in general. First, let's jump over to Japan. In Japan, in 1994, they got their first version of the Definitive Collection. I say first version because in Japan, they actually got two different versions of the Definitive Collection. This is the one from 1994 that is essentially like the one in the US in 1993. There are some changes to some of the audio commentaries and whatnot, which I detail in the episode of the show about this. Check the description for the link to it. The biggest thing that is most noteworthy about it, though, if you just look at it, not counting the fact that you have Japanese text all over the place, is the fact that the George Lucas The Creative Impulse book that is included inside the Definitive Collection actually has the Japanese dust jacket on it here in this 1994 release. So we saw the original retail release of the book itself in 92, just as a way to compare. We saw the American dust jacket for the original version then, along with the one from 97, which is essentially a reissue of the book that has been updated. And we did see this used without a dust jacket in 93, last episode, in the American Definitive Collection. But in Japan, they actually get the dust jacket on it. Would it have been that freaking hard to get the dust jacket in the US? Come on. Meanwhile, if you wanted some fancy-looking box sets, there was one you could get out of France at the time that honestly is in some pretty stupid packaging. The kind of stuff that is very easily damaged, quite frankly, that makes these hard to come by these days intact. Mine has quite a bit of damage to it. That is this collector's edition set of the Star Wars trilogy. Again, coming from France here. It's essentially kind of like a Definitive Collection for them. In some respects, at least the packaging is meant to somewhat mirror it as elements of the Definitive Collection packaging. But look at that packaging. What in the hell were they thinking with this packaging? And I know I just sounded like Seinfeld there. What in the hell? Only because my voice cracked. What's up with this packaging? It opens up like this and has widescreen French dubbed versions inside. And the last side of Return of the Jedi is actually from Star Wars: The Jedi, The Making of a Saga. But my gosh, what an absolutely horrid form of packaging they chose for this thing. I can't even put the freaking thing on my shelves with the rest of the LaserDisc down here. I gotta stick it sitting on its back in the closet just to keep it from getting further damage because you can't sit it upright. Where's Cooney from UHF when I need him? But those weren't the most important things coming out of 1994 abroad. In the UK, there was a realization that when it came to VHS sales, despite the fact that the most recent releases for the original trilogy were quite a while back and they were just sort of catalog releases, somehow they kept being up near the top of the freaking sales charts. People loved the films and kept buying them on VHS. So the thought was, how much money could we possibly make if we did another big push with the original trilogy, but actually put some marketing oomph behind it in the UK? What might our sales numbers be then? So they hatched a plan to basically do just that. Except rather than using the previously existing version of the films, they used the same masters as were used on the Definitive Collection. Now they didn't get that THX certification on these, so they're not usually thought of as a THX Remastered edition, just digitally remastered. But yes, the Definitive Collection THX Remastered Edition actually hits before the branded THX Remastered Edition in the UK as sort of an experiment to see how well it would work. And the experiment paid off. They sold amazingly for an old release. So what happens? That provides the proof of concept that lights the spark to give us the THX Remastered Edition on VHS and LaserDisc and even other formats in other regions like Mexico with Beta in 1995. But what we think of as a THX Remastered edition that grew out of the definitive collection in 93 and hits worldwide in 95 might not have happened had it not been for the success of these 1994 releases in the UK. They had a full-screen version of each film under this digitally mastered label based on the definitive collection, and another special widescreen edition of each film. We can thank these 6 VHS cassettes for the THX Remastered edition that came 1 year later. But to see those, we'll need to jump into our next episode where we check out 1995.